Welcome, dear viewers, to Malicious Compliance. In today's video, it's a bunch of bosses screwing up. Our first post is by one cardiologist. Oh, I'm on private property? My first time posting here. I used to work for a supermarket chain, and quite often I'd be asked by management to work at other locations. Most of the time, this wasn't a big deal. I was happy to help out. It gave me an excuse to drive and have the petrol paid for. However, one day I was asked to work at a location very far away at a very early hour in the morning. I initially refused on the grounds that I would have to wake up around 2 a.m. in order to have a shower, breakfast, and drive to be on the site at 5 a.m. After some arm bending from management, I finally relented and begrudgingly agreed I would do it. Due to the drive not taking nearly as long as I initially expected, I arrived on location around 4:30 a.m. I waited in my car with the music playing. At 4:50 a.m., I get a loud knock on the car window, nearly making me jump out of my skin. It was the manager for that store, who, never seeing me before, did not know who I was. The conversation went as follows. You need to leave. This is private property. Oh, but I don't care. Go now. I quickly realized I can play this to my advantage. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I don't want any problems. Of course, I'll go right away. Sorry. And as per his request, I drove home with a smile on my face, knowing that I'd have the rest of the day free to myself. A few hours later, I get a phone call. I answer the unrecognized number, and I recognize the voice immediately. It was the manager who told me to leave. Hello, I'm looking for OP. Hi, yeah, that's me. This is manager calling from location. I was expecting you to work with me today. You should have been here around 5 a.m. Trying to sound casual. Yeah, I was there waiting in my car. You told me to leave, remember? But you didn't say there are no ifs or buts. I was on private property and was asked to leave. I was legally obliged to do so. Right, but don't you think it doesn't matter what I thought? I was asked to leave private property. I'm not going to break the law and risk getting in trouble with the police. Is at this point, he hung up on me. I expected to get in trouble for what happened, but I never heard anything more about it. This was a few years back now, too. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I hope you enjoyed it. Edit for commonly asked questions. I was paid for petrol money and travel time. I was not paid for the shift. It was originally going to be a day off anyway. I suffered no financial losses whatsoever as a result of this. My local manager never spoke about this, and I never mentioned it to him. I did not suffer any disciplinary action. Yes, I did have to wake up early and lose out on sleep. Our next post is by I Swear at Kids. Boss keeps pushing his task onto me. I work at a decking products company. We make stuff so people can build their own decks. It's a warehouse job, and I'm shift lead for third shift. Our previous production manager used to do safety meetings once a month for all the shifts. He was determined and took us about a year to promote the second shift to lead production manager. Most of the time he's laid back, but now he's insistent on me doing the safety meetings for the first and third shift because we have a 30-minute overlap window. We didn't do the safety meetings at all when we didn't have a production manager. A lot of first shifts have poor attitudes and don't speak English very well, and I don't speak Spanish, so communicating with them is challenging. I'm an introvert, so these hour-long meetings are draining, and I actively dislike doing them. I express my concerns about the language barrier to my production manager, and he keeps pushing them on me, despite the fact that he speaks Spanish and I don't. He also doesn't care what the topic is. He just tells me to choose. It seems like he's doing everything he can to push all the responsibility on me. So I did our meeting this week. It was about severe weather and cold conditions such as hypothermia and how to avoid the dangers involved. We are located in Florida, specifically the Tampa Bay area where we don't see snow or work with refrigeration units. I handed him the sign-off sheet after the meeting, and he didn't even notice the topic. Our next post is by Necron Boy. Retiring lawyer spills his beans. Kinda long with no TLDR. This is all from memory based on the ramblings of a drunk retiring lawyer about 30 years ago. All mistakes are mine. So I started work in the 90s on the shop floor of a pipe making factory, but made a few friends in the office. So one year at the end-year breakup party, I overheard a story from the corporate lawyer who was retiring on the same day. Someone asked what his most memorable case was. This guy was great. Gray hair, gray skin, gray clothing, gray manners. Nothing distinctive about him at all, in fact. At the annual company party known for drinking, this guy was always sober. But not that night. He was a contracts lawyer. Never tried a case, just proved contracts all day. as far as I know. He's probably dead by now, along with most of the people in the story, but no company names, as those entities live forever. So we made pipe. Plastic pipe, water supply, sewer, electrical, and telecommunications duct. We were the second business in the market and would swap contracts with the biggest manufacturer as we both bid on supplying the big players in the markets. In our jurisdiction, we had a government communication department which got sold off and became Big Telco along with deregulation of the sector. We supplied green ducting for telecommunications to Big Telco. Lost the contract to the competition, gained it back, etc. Life went on. One day, a new international company entered our market and started undercutting Big Telco. Let's call them OK Telco. So as things go, we lost the Big Telco contract, but picked up the OK Telco contract, which was bigger as they had established an entire network from scratch. Yay us! This is where Mr. Gray enters the story. He was a contracts lawyer, not a criminal law or other specialty, but contract. He gets a please attend meeting invite from Telco along with a select few from our company, probably about the upcoming renegotiating of contracts. When Mr. Gray walks into the room with his boss, there sitting across the boardroom table is Mr. Bigshot and several $5 a word eating, flesh eating attack lawyers. They ambush them with an injunction about using the green. You know, the standard telecommunications green for OK Telco pipes, and are ready to take them for everything, including the pension fund for daring to supply the competition. They had a strict contract on the table which had to be signed then and there, or another $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyer standing by the courthouse would have a judge sign an injunction against making any pipe at all until the case was settled. Probably an empty threat, but even a 2-week break in production could kill our company while lawyers cleared it with a judge to let us make other types of pipe. Mr. Gray looked over the contract and told the boss to sign as they could tie us up in knots due to their huge size and budget, while the contract just made it clear that this green was exclusive property to Big Teleco and could only make it for Big Teleco. We folded and signed. Life went on with us making OK Teleco a that green pipe. A few months later, Mr. Gray went to a 20-year reunion from his law school. Guess who was there? Mr. Bigshot, telling everyone about how great a lawyer he is and how he can push around anyone due to how great he is, and definitely not due to his budget in an army of attack lawyers. Mr. Gray is pissed. Mr. Gray bides his time and pores over the contract. A few years later, Big Teleco has to have a name change due to how much bad press they have from shifty service and practices, and as a way to avoid debts under the old name. They changed everything. Storefronts, letterheads, everything. They are now New Old Teleco. Contracts come and go. The other big pipe company gets the contract from New Old Teleco to make pipe. Mr. Gray strikes. Other pipe company and New Old Teleco get served with a cease and desist order about making and using green pipe. Big Shot lawyer is puzzled and angry that this has happened and calls Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray arranges a meeting and then hangs up on Big Shot mid-threat. Big Shot turns up with his attack lawyers to see Mr. Gray in the boardroom. No ambush, no backup, just him. Mr. Gray lets him vent about how they're going to gut the company and Mr. Gray will never work in law again. Then Mr. Gray takes out a packet of papers and a highlighter, making a few strokes and pushing it to the closest attack lawyer. They read what was highlighted and screwed up their face. This was repeated as the papers were passed to the Big Shot lawyer. I'm no lawyer, and this happened 30 years ago, so I can only paraphrase what Mr. Gray said he highlighted. Only our pipe co, in conjunction with Big Teleco, can make and or use the green pipe. Exclusively with no substitutes, parent or child companies, successors, or blah blah blah. Since there were only 2 companies listed on the contract, they were the only 2 sets of people who could decide the fate of this green pipe. Big Shot said they could claim ownership of the pipe color since they were in effect just a rebrand of Big Teleco. Mr. Gray pointed out that the admission would cause all their avoided debts to go home with interest, along with the admission of guilt of trying to revert the course of justice. Big Shot then claimed they were inherited by ownership. Mr. Gray cut him off with the no child company clause. Big Shot went on for a while, being blocked by Mr. Gray at every turn. And even his attack lawyers were jumping in to shut him down because he was exposing them to risks greater than any of them were willing to be a part of, especially since they had made the contract as airtight as they could to screw us. As they were leaving, Mr. Gray said 2 things. This was an unfair fight. All of you versus me. Next time, bring more and smarter lawyers. And since we now effectively control this green, here's a document making the color public domain. We don't want to screw the other pipe company. It's not their fault they have idiots for customers. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another Reddit video. If you would like to, click another video. And if you would be so kind as to like and subscribe. Thank you very much.